It's hard to be an NFL fan and not be aware of some players whose on-field reputation is just terrifying. These football gladiators have come to represent strength, quickness, and an unwavering will to succeed. Let us begin with Ray Lewis. The man, the legend, the myth. This guy was a walking nightmare, and he did not require the game to show it. His introduction into the game launched total war. Like Maximus from Gladiator, he'd emerge from the tunnel with flames burning all around him. When other teams saw this, they knew they were going to be in for a world of hurt. Ray's touchdowns? Bone-crushing. He didn't even have to concentrate on one player in particular to lay things out. Former Bengals wide receiver Chad Okocinco, who had been in a division with Lewis for years, had enough of Lewis's reign of terror. Next up, we've got a player known for a "this is war" mentality. Jack Tatum was an absolute nightmare on the field. The hits he dished out were brutal, and sometimes he crossed the line. No wonder he earned the nickname the Assassin. During a 1978 preseason game, paralyzed Patriots wide receiver Darryl Stingley from the chest down. Yes, you heard it right. Preseason game. People couldn't believe the level of brutality in a game that didn't even count. And Tatum never apologized for that hit. He said, "I understand why Darryl is considered the victim, but I'll never understand why some people look at me as the villain." Tatum's idea of a good hit shed some light on his approach to the game. "My idea of a good hit is when the victim wakes up on the sideline, train whistles blowing in his head. I like to believe that my best hits border on felonious assault. He was an intimidator like no other." Coming up at number 3, while Tatum's hits will live forever in infamy, the most famous hit in NFL history belongs to Lawrence Taylor. In a 1985 Monday Night Football game, Taylor single-handedly changed the sport forever. As the Redskins ran a flea flicker, Taylor saw right through the trickery and pounced on QB Joe Theismann like a jungle cat. Theismann suffered career-ending stats to prove it. He led the league in rushing in 8 seasons, and his famous line was, "Make sure when anyone tackles you, he remembers how much it hurts." To this day, Jim Brown holds the record for career rushing yards per game with 104.3, a record that's been unbroken for over 50 years. He had the attitude and the skills to back it up, making him a nightmare for any defense. At number 4, let's talk about Jack Lambert, the face of the Steel Curtain, who was a true beast. You've probably seen that iconic toothless snarl of his. Well, when rookie John Elway faced off against Lambert for the first time, it was a moment he wanted to forget. Elway was like, "Get me out of here ASAP!" Lambert lived by one motto: the Steelers were the intimidators. He'd always have his teammates' backs. Now, at number 5, let's talk about Night Train Lane. This guy wasn't even supposed to be in the NFL, but he sure made a name for himself. His tackling style? Oh boy, it was brutal to say the least. He'd grab guys around the neck or their face masks and just sling them to the ground like it was nothing. People even started calling it the Night Train necktie. Crazy, right? Coming up at number 6, let's talk about Butkus, another linebacker known for his savage playing style, fellow Hall of Famer. Deacon Jones described him as an animal who aimed to put his opponents in the cemetery, not the hospital. Butkus's warm-up routine was bizarre, using anything to get himself riled up. If an opponent laughed, he'd pretend it was at him or the Bears to make himself mad. It worked because nobody laughed at Butkus on the field. As former Packers running back MacArthur Lane said, "If I had a choice, I'd sooner go one-on-one with a grizzly bear than with Butkus. I prayed that I could get up every time Butkus hit me." Butkus led one of the NFL's greatest defenses in tackles for 8 straight seasons. He was an enforcer on the field. Now, let's switch it up and talk about a player who wasn't a defender, but struck fear into his opponents. At number 7, Jim Brown was a powerhouse on the field, and he made sure everyone knew it. Brown was nearly impossible to bring down, and he had the linemen feared having to block Reggie for a good reason. He was a force to be reckoned with. Next up, at number 8, we've got James Harrison, the underdog with a relentless drive. Despite being undersized, Harrison refused to give up on his dream, and that determination made him one of the strongest and most durable players in the game. He was all about putting the hurt on opponents, and he made no apologies for it. He once said, "My objective when tackling someone was to put them out of that game. I didn't want to injure them, but I wanted them to hurt." Harrison's hits were legendary, and he even knocked out his close friend, Josh Cribbs, in a game. He wanted opponents to remember the pain, even if he considered them friends. Now, that's scary. Coming up at number 9, Reggie White is another player who relied on a unique combination of speed and strength. He could take a 320-pounds man and toss him aside like it was nothing. White's speed and athleticism allowed him to play defensive end while moving like a linebacker. He was unblockable and retired as the league's all-time sack leader with 198. Finally, let's talk about last, but not least, Earl Campbell, the human wrecking ball who wasn't supposed to be that fast. He was a powerhouse running back with a 4.64 40-yard dash time. At 5'11" and 244 pounds, he had the speed and strength to run over defenders and leave them in pain. Former Cowboys safety Cliff Harris said, "When you finished a game against Earl, You had to sit in a tub with Epsom salts. Campbell's hits were like getting hit by a freight train. He was an unstoppable force, and even the toughest defenders. So there you have it, folks. A deep dive into some of the scariest players in NFL history. These guys weren't just athletes. They were legends who could make their opponents' worst nightmares come true on the football field. Stay tuned for more exciting content on this channel. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We'll catch you in the next one.